Welcome to Discover La Jolla, where we showcase the jewel of San Diego, and that's La Jolla, California. I'm excited and honored to have Chris Circuit in the studio this morning.
Thank you, Jim.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Circuit Appraisals.
Circuit Valuations.
Circuit Valuations,
Yes.
sorry.
I made it confusing when I named
Yeah.
my business. I should
Yeah.
have just gone Circuit Appraisals, but
That's okay.
had
Circuit.
a mentor that had a valuations named business, and I was copying him.
So you were a commercial broker in the past
Yeah.
for years and
I
years.
started out at CBRE,
Got it.
leasing industrial buildings and office buildings, and worked there for 8 years, and worked privately for a couple companies for about 7 years after that, and then was ready for a change.
And so you saw an opportunity with the appraisal business and got into that like 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, just about.
Okay.
Had just kind of got downsized by a company and had a friend that was doing it. And
Got it.
when I asked him, I go, "What do you do? What's your day like?" And
Yeah.
he looked at me and said, "I've been waiting for you for 10 years to say that.
Oh, really?
Let's jump in." And he
Cool.
kind of took me out for a couple days, showed me what he did, and I haven't looked back and really enjoy it.
And you're focused primarily only on the residential appraisal side of the world?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a licensing thing. I have a certified residential appraisal license, which covers any real estate 4 units or under. Residential real estate 4
Got
units
it.
or under.
Okay.
Bigger than that's the commercial license.
So what are some of the reasons people would get an appraisal?
Well, I think people mainly think for loans. That's been kind of the big
Right, that's the
big
number
reason,
one.
or they're selling a house.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think a lot of appraisers base their business on that. I kind of shifted out of that when I was getting started about 6 years ago, as the loan market shifted from 2% loans up
Right.
to 7.
Right. There
A lot
weren't
of-
as many.
A lot of that went away, and I
Yeah.
was kind of a newer appraiser getting started. So I shifted into pursuing like data death, like trust and estate planning from attorneys,
Okay.
divorce. And so when someone owns a home in a trust and someone in the trust passes away, the beneficiaries and the descendants, the people who still own it, are allowed to get an appraisal for a stepped up tax basis, and it proves their tax situation. So there's I do a lot of that, and
Okay.
some divorce, and some, I kind of take on any and all appraisals that anyone asks me to do. And I've done some for immigration status, I've done some for tax planning, I've done some for, anytime anyone, say for example, would ask you, "Hey, I need an appraiser for anything,"
Right.
as long as it meets 4 units or under, I can do it.
So someone may just say, I want to know what my home is worth.
I've
I'm not planning on selling. I'm not planning on doing anything. I just want to know.
done a lot of that for people just trying, who are curious. I've done it for transactions, for example. This happens kind of a lot in La Jolla for non-lender or cash-based transactions where the buyer and seller still want to understand and,
Right.
and have
So
the
it's
right
a
fit.
cash transaction, so
Yeah.
there's no loan involved.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, we don't need an appraisal. But if someone was spending $10 million,
Absolutely.
that buyer may still want to verify that the property's worth that.
And I think that's a great use of an appraiser, right? We're trained, we're supposed to be non-biased, arm's length, read the data, report a number. There's no influence, so it's a good reason, if especially on something at that size, 10 million plus, just to make sure you're on the same page. Ultimately, people agree to their deal, but they like to verify. So I've done a lot of that.
And do you have more arm's length now with the realtors? Like, is there a requirement that you kind of keep, or do you work hand in hand with realtors and ask their opinions and collaborate with them?
I mean, it's both. We are arm's length just by definition. I'm not incentivized. I don't pay referrals. I don't receive,
Got it.
I
So
don't-
nobody
I don't
can buy
participate
you
in the incentive.
for your judgment.
But that being said, I work very closely. I try to, because actually a large source of my business has come from real estate brokers, just by networking, going to the La Jolla REBA meeting and getting
Right.
to know people.
Right.
I've found that as I was pursuing legal appraisals, I found that real estate brokers, clients, homeowners trust their real estate broker more than their attorney, and I get more referrals for legal and for estate planning, tax planning purposes from real estate brokers, from the people, like for example in REBA, more than attorneys. It's like someone needs an appraisal, an attorney can tell a homeowner they need an appraisal, and they call their broker. They don't ask their attorney for the appraisal. They go, "Hey, who do you know?" So I do work both for generating business, and then I think the other part of that is I do rely a lot on real estate brokers' opinions for value. I think our role as appraisers is to look at data and read the data, and sometimes the data is lacking. Sometimes the data doesn't tell all the way, the full story, and so I'll call to verify comps or ask the question. And I think, I've said to you and said to others, so if an appraiser calls, you answer the phone. They probably only need about 90 seconds, but that 90 seconds is super valuable to get your opinion, because you're talking to buyers and sellers every day. You are currently in the market real time, and we kind of,
you're looking at kind of close,
we're looking
past
at close
transactions.
past
So you're
sales.
looking into the past.
Yeah.
So you'll reach out to the brokers that are living in the present with them.
And I've had it. I've looked at homes. I was looking at one recently in Bird Rock, and the value I was coming up with is a little low. There was one comp that was way above everything else, and I called and got the story, and it made sense, and it impacted my opinion.
You adjust
because
your value because of the story.
There weren't pictures, there wasn't a lot, and it took a couple times to get a hold of that particular agent. But once I did, I got great insight that impacted my opinion. So it was very helpful. So I work very closely. I try to.
And you've also got a neat little niche too, that you've joined forces and are hired sometimes with this Eco Salvage business, which is a whole. Explain a little bit about that,
absolutely,
because that's a very unique niche in the appraisal world.
It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Okay.
I think you've had on Brian Brady from Harvest Eco Salvage.
Yep, we have.
Harvest is a nonprofit that helps homeowners recycle their building improvements. So the IRS allows people to make a non-cash donation. Harvest Eco Salvage has figured out that applies to house or building improvements. They're separate from the land, so the homeowner owns the land, and they're donating what they're demoing. Harvest then does their best to recycle it, keep as much as possible out of the landfill, which is a huge, I think, benefit to our community and earth, just to try and reuse cabinets, reuse windows, repurpose the concrete to put it back into roads, so it's just not all going to the landfill. And within that, the incentive is that the homeowner hires an appraiser to put a replacement cost value. What does it cost to rebuild
this house,
what they're demoing, right?
So the homeowner's demoing the roof and the walls, and then they're taking those materials and donating it.
So they donate them. It kind of happens on paper. They make a contract to donate it, and then the
and
harvest
it keeps it out of the landfill.
And then I put a replacement cost value on what's it cost to rebuild it, and that is the value of their donation.
And so this is an IRS-compliant donation.
Absolutely. There's a form we sign, 8323, but it's under the non-cash donation section, which is I think 100 years old at this point. So yeah, it's like going to Goodwill and donating some clothes, saying on your taxes I donated $500 worth of clothes, but in this case it's hundreds of thousands of dollars typically that it can come out.
That's a really incredible business when you think about it, because a lot of homeowners just demo, and it goes to the landfill, goes in a dumpster and goes to the landfill, and they get tax write-off.
They get nothing. No, I know. And it's and I think that's one of the beauties of the program is the kind of the person, the founder that started it. She started it I think 27 years ago in Arizona, was just frustrated with the need to recycle. There was no incentive, and so it made it, the contractors, it's another step for them and a little bit more money. There's some things against it, and so I think it's a brilliant idea to incentivize the homeowner, because they call the shots. They say, no, we're going to do this program, or we're going to do this, and so it incentivizes the recycling, which is great.
So that's a little more intense appraisal, right?
It is, definitely.
And it's obviously IRS compliant, so you've got to be following all those check boxes there.
It's IRS compliant. It's more in depth. It's I prepare them to be more scrutinized in case they haven't been, and I think I've fortunately for me, I love doing it. I like the feedback on it, but I was in a unique situation where I was trained by someone who'd done it for 15 years, and I just happened to be a friend, and he was a mentor, and
right place, right time,
slid me in, and now I've done, I don't know, in 3 years I've probably done over 200 of those appraisals for the Harvest Group, and I've really become truly an expert
replacement costs.
in doing these types
Yeah.
of appraisals because I've got great experience. I've
Right.
got a master's degree of the tax salvage appraisals that have only come from real world experience.
And so that's an interesting knowledge to have, is what does it cost to build again? How you're tracking material costs, right? So
Yeah.
you've got to really stay up, especially over the last, I don't know, year or so with all the tariffs and the changes in prices of lumber and steel. And
it does ebb and flow. And I think there's a really good software, not to take away my own expertise, but there's a good software that helps track it. And then I try and stay, there's usually a general contractor on every job. And so
Right.
I gather their bids. I try and audit what they're doing to make sure it's in line with the software. I talk to them, ask them questions, just to make sure that the values that I'm reporting and the opinions I'm developing are still supported by, interviews. It's like, I feel like that's a big part of the appraisal job, is read the data but verify. I ask questions, like I say, I call brokers and say, hey, what was the true story with this comp? And to the contractor, what are your true costs? And it just is, I think it's one of the things I enjoy. I do like talking to people, but I think it's I don't know everybody, but I feel like it helps set me apart, that I'm willing to take an extra 5 or 10 minutes to just make a phone call
Sure.
and find out more info and confirm it. And I don't know that I've heard not everyone does that. And
how's technology changing what you're doing? Like AI, or how is technology changing your business? Or are you using technology in a different way than you were 6 years ago?
So I think that it's impactful. I think there's a handful of different softwares that I use to streamline it, to import data from the MLS, to there's one that I send data to. I run 3 or 4 reports and I plug it in, and it helps give me a baseline on adjustments. It'll help me with giving kind of a guideline of where the view adjustment, where the square footage adjustment should be. And that's something that would take a lot longer if we weren't able to do it and plug into that software. I use the software to help with the replacement costs. So there's a lot of those that are technically AI software. They're synthesizing data in a way that I can't do as quickly.
So it's helping.
And so it's definitely helping. I think there's definitely a discussion coming about the automated valuations versus hands-on appraisal, right? And I guess I think that's coming. I mean, I think as you look at houses in areas that are pretty similar, tract house,
it could work.
It should work, and it probably does work if there's enough data. But as you think about it, it doesn't. No. And you know why. It's every house is different. Every house has a different angle, a different view. It's bigger, smaller, view restriction,
CC&Rs, like whatever.
And you really, houses in La Jolla vary in age from brand new to 110 years old.
Right.
And how do the improvements impact? And I feel like you really can't get a good idea without stepping in
person.
So
I agree.
So which is, I think I got great advice that when I was starting, one mentor was like, steer into the difficult. Don't say no. If something's hard,
steer into the difficult.
Figure it out, right? And take the extra time to learn how to do it, because the easy stuff might go away. But the hard stuff, the complicated appraisals, the highly complex, the high end, the luxury, they're gonna need someone to verify. So I've kind of just learned to not say no, and I didn't know how. I've gotten questions on, can you do this appraisal, and I just say sure, and then I would dig in, take extra hours and learn it.
To think that like you're the guy that's being brought in to put a valuation, and sometimes that's 8 million or 15 million, or you're higher. Talking big real numbers, and a lot hinges on your work to the transaction. Do you ever get brought in to combat other appraisals?
I've done that a little bit. Yeah, I've done that. I've had less experience, I think, combating. I think I've been a part of plenty at that level where they do 2 or 3 appraisals.
I see.
And I've not been in a position where I've had to really argue against someone. I've done a little bit of like expert witness testimony, but I think I've only done 3 or 4 of those, and they've been pretty straightforward cases, so I didn't get too heavily beat up. But I've definitely been, part of multiple appraisal situations where you just
Where something like a house could be worth 10 million.
absolutely,
And
yeah,
the buyer or seller is like, hey, I want to get multiple
yeah,
appraisers
which
to
is
come out and evaluate, and let's see where they all end up. And then,
which I'm always for. I feel like, different there's science. It should be data science, but there's art. There's kind of personal opinion, and
Right.
and you can get a couple different opinions, and it's good to get a couple. And I'm always willing to answer questions and support what I think. And I'm actually, I don't try to be wrong, but I'm willing to be. If someone can point
right,
out where
so-
I've missed something, I'll acknowledge, and we'll revisit and update. So
what's one of the most expensive appraisals you were involved with?
there's a confidential client I've done that has a house that's about $50 million.
50 million.
And at that stage, it's hard to tell. Fortunately, there's a couple of comps on the street over the past 5
but
years.
Very
but
few to draw upon, right?
yeah, I'm not supposed to. Yeah, but
Yeah.
You can figure out. There's only a few neighborhoods where there's some like that, and there's a couple of recent comps in a certain
Right.
neighborhood where they get there, and
Yeah.
it's $50 million. It's
Wow.
location,
Such a
It's not
huge
a
number.
big house, so it's location
Yeah.
is where those plots of lands on this street they're valuable.
Yeah. Could that be
So-
in La Jolla?
It's not.
Oh. Could it be in Rancho Santa Fe? Could
No.
it be in Del Mar?
It could be.
It could be in Del Mar. Okay, good. Well, there's only so many places it could be.
There's a strip along the water that has some
And-
houses.
yes.
I think the most recent sale was not one I'm talking about. I think it sold for either 50 or 54.
Yes.
It's right on, not Camino Del Mar, but it's a side
Sandy Lane. or
Sandy
something.
Lane.
Yeah.
So there's one up in a neighborhood up there that I
See, I know where
get a
they are.
chance.
I know.
I
I know where the rich houses are.
But yeah, no, there's there. I've had a few in Del Mar that are, 20 acres. So about 18 to 19 million dollars on 20 acres. That
Right.
are a 12,000 square foot house, which
It's weird, right? You either have a small house on
Yeah.
the ocean
Yeah.
that could be worth 20 million, or you go a little bit inland and you get 20 acres that could
Yeah.
be worth 20 million. And how do you make those adjustments, and the view adjustments, and the road noise adjustments, and
Yeah.
how close to the school, and
I know it's
that's a lot, Chris.
it's interesting. It's fun work. It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
And to some degree, one of the pieces of advice I got: if there's not a lot of data, then everyone don't. If there's not a lot of data to support it, every appraiser is working with the same data. So
Got
you
it.
kind of make your opinion and stand by it. And
Well, I think it's really fascinating how
Thank you.
you've carved out this niche too with the
Well-
eco salvage, and that
Well,
it's
it's-
good for the environment. You're helping the environment.
it's been
so
great.
Thank you.
Well, and I thank you. You've introduced a couple of your clients, and
Yep.
they've executed on the program, and
Yep.
it's been a
Oh,
good
they're
thing.
delighted.
And it's been a good
They're
thing.
delighted. Well, there you go. Circuit Valuations, Chris Circuit. If you need an appraisal, call Chris.
That's me. Thank you.
and
Thank
we'll
you.
see you on the next episode of Discover La Jolla.